The Tylenol murders refer to a series of poisoning incidents that occurred in the United States in 1982. 7 people in the Chicago area died after consuming capsules of extra-strength Tylenol that had been laced with potassium cyanide. Who are victims of the Tylenol murder case? Suspects of Tylenol murder case? How the case ended. Everything you want to know about Tylenol murder case is in this video. Welcome back to Mighty River. The incidents occurred in September 1982, when bottles of extra-strength Tylenol capsules were tampered with and contaminated with potassium cyanide. The tampered bottles were then placed back on store shelves in various supermarkets and pharmacies in the Chicago area. Unsuspecting customers purchased the contaminated bottles, and several people died shortly after taking the tainted medication. The Tylenol poisonings caused widespread panic and led to a massive recall of Tylenol products, which cost the manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson, millions of dollars. The case prompted changes in packaging and tamper-evident seals for over-the-counter medications, as well as stricter regulations for pharmaceutical packaging in the United States. The first reporting of the Tylenol poisonings occurred in September 1982 when the initial victims fell ill or died after taking the contaminated Tylenol capsules. Mary Kellerman, a 12-year-old girl, was the first victim who died on September 29, 1982, after taking an extra-strength Tylenol capsule that had been tampered with. Her death prompted an investigation into the source of the contamination. Once Mary Kellerman's death was reported to the authorities, law enforcement agencies were alerted, and they began investigating the incident. The news of the Tylenol poisonings spread quickly through the media, and the public was warned to check their Tylenol bottles for any signs of tampering. After the first victim's death was reported, more cases of illness and death related to the Tylenol poisonings were reported to law enforcement and public health officials. This led to a widespread public alert and a sense of fear and panic as people became aware of the potential danger posed by the contaminated Tylenol capsules. Media outlets also reported extensively on the Tylenol poisonings, providing updates on the investigation, warnings to the public, and information about the victims. The news coverage helped raise awareness about the issue and led to increased vigilance among consumers who checked their Tylenol bottles for any signs of tampering. The first reporting of the Tylenol poisonings was a critical step in launching the investigation and raising public awareness about the contaminated medication. It led to a series of actions, including law enforcement involvement, public warnings, and media coverage, that aimed to address the issue and protect the public from further harm. The victims of the Tylenol murders were 7 people who died as a result of consuming extra-strength Tylenol capsules that had been contaminated with potassium cyanide. Mary Kellerman, age 12. Mary was the first victim of the Tylenol poisonings. She died on September 29, 1982. Adam Janis, age 27. Adam died on September 29, 1982. Along with his brother Stanley and sister-in-law Teresa. Adam's death was the first in a series of deaths in the Janis family. Stanley Janis, age 25. Stanley died on September 29, 1982. Teresa Janis, age 19. Teresa died on September 29, 1982. Mary McFarland, age 31. Mary died on October 1, 1982. Paula Prince, age 35. Paula died on October 1, 1982. Mary Reiner, age 27. Mary died on October 2, 1982. After the Tylenol poisonings occurred, law enforcement agencies launched an extensive investigation to determine how the capsules were tampered with and contaminated. The capsules were eventually discovered by investigators through various means. Victim reports. The initial victims who fell ill or died after taking the contaminated Tylenol capsules alerted law enforcement. They reported the incidents to the police, which led to an investigation into the source of the tainted medication. Store surveillance. Law enforcement reviewed surveillance footage from the stores where the contaminated Tylenol capsules were purchased. They looked for any suspicious activity or individuals who may have tampered with the product on store shelves. Store shelf search. Investigators physically searched store shelves in multiple locations where the contaminated Tylenol capsules were purchased. They looked for any abnormal packaging or signs of tampering, such as broken seals or capsules that appeared to have been opened. Public warnings. Public health officials and law enforcement issued warnings through the media, urging the public to check their Tylenol bottles and report any suspicious packaging or capsules. This led to the discovery of additional contaminated bottles that were turned in by concerned consumers. Analysis of contaminated bottles. Once contaminated bottles were identified, law enforcement collected evidence from the crime scenes, including the tampered Tylenol capsules and the bottles themselves. These items were analyzed for fingerprints, DNA, and other forensic evidence that could potentially lead to identifying the perpetrators. Search warrants. Law enforcement obtained search warrants to search the homes, vehicles, and other locations of potential suspects. These searches may have resulted in the discovery of additional evidence, including the contaminated Tylenol capsules or other items related to the crime. Some of the suspects or persons of interest who have been investigated in connection with the Tylenol poisonings includes James W. Lewis was a man who sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson, the parent company of Tylenol, shortly after the poisonings occurred, claiming responsibility and demanding a large sum of money in exchange for stopping the killings. He was later convicted of extortion and served 13 years in prison, but he denied any involvement in the poisonings. Theodore Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, Theodore Kaczynski, a domestic terrorist and convicted serial bomber, was also briefly considered a suspect in the Tylenol poisonings due to similarities in his modus operandi, which involved tampering with consumer products. However, there was no conclusive evidence linking him to the Tylenol poisonings, and he was never charged in connection with the case. Various individuals associated with or known to the victims. Law enforcement authorities also investigated individuals associated with or known to the victims of the Tylenol poisonings, including family members, friends, and acquaintances, as potential suspects. However, no concrete evidence was found to implicate any of them in the poisonings. Despite extensive investigations, no one has been definitively identified as the perpetrator of the Tylenol poisonings. The Tylenol poisonings case has generated numerous theories over the years. Random act of sabotage. One theory suggests that the Tylenol poisonings were a random act of sabotage, with no specific target or motive. It proposes that the perpetrators may have tampered with the Tylenol capsules indiscriminately, intending to harm anyone who consumed the contaminated product, with no particular connection to the victims. Copycat crime. Another theory suggests that the Tylenol poisonings were a copycat crime, inspired by previous incidents of product tampering or poisoning. This theory proposes that the perpetrators may have been motivated by the notoriety and attention garnered by previous cases of product tampering and sought to replicate those crimes by contaminating Tylenol capsules. Revenge or personal vendetta. Some theories suggest that the Tylenol poisonings were motivated by revenge or a personal vendetta against an individual or group associated with Johnson & Johnson, the parent company of Tylenol. These theories propose that the perpetrators may have had a specific grudge or grievance against the company or its employees, and used the Tylenol capsules as a means to exact revenge. Economic or financial motive. Another theory suggests that the Tylenol poisonings may have been motivated by an economic or financial motive. This theory proposes that the perpetrators may have sought to profit financially by causing panic and fear among the public, which could have had negative financial implications for Johnson & Johnson and the broader pharmaceutical industry. Internal sabotage. Some theories propose that the Tylenol poisonings were an act of internal sabotage, involving an employee or former employee of Johnson & Johnson or its subsidiaries. These theories suggest that the perpetrators may have had access to the Tylenol capsules and intentionally contaminated them as an act of sabotage or revenge against the company. It's important to note that these theories are speculative and have not been proven, and the actual motive and identity of the perpetrators remain unknown. The case remains one of the most infamous unsolved murder cases in U.S. history.